What begins as a desperate rescue spirals into a nightmare where every decision becomes a weapon and every weakness is ruthlessly exploited. In the shadows of a carefully orchestrated trap, Nick Newman is pushed to the brink of physical and psychological collapse, his body betraying him at the worst possible moment. As the pressure mounts and time slips away, Adam Newman is forced into an unthinkable choice, one that crosses a line he can never uncross, trading long-term destruction for a fragile, temporary chance at survival. But what neither of them realizes is that they are no longer in control of the situation. Watching from the darkness, Matt Clark has already anticipated every move, turning their desperation into the final piece of his twisted design. Meanwhile, Sharon Newman and Noah Newman remain trapped at the center of a deadly game, unaware that the very rescue they are waiting for may become the trigger for total collapse. In the unforgiving world of the young and the restless, this is not just a race against time, it is a brutal descent into chaos, where trust is shattered, control is an illusion, and survival itself comes at a devastating cost. The collapse did not begin in the warehouse. It began hours earlier, in the quiet, suffocating space where Nick Newman sat alone, his body betraying him in slow, relentless waves. Withdrawal was not simply pain, it was disintegration. Muscles trembled uncontrollably, his skin burned and froze in the same breath, and his mind fractured under the weight of cravings that clawed at him with merciless persistence. Every second stretched into something unbearable, every thought circling back to the same destructive need he had fought so hard to escape. He was no longer preparing for a rescue, he was struggling just to exist. What made it worse was the knowledge that time was running out not just for him, but for Sharon Newman and Noah Newman. Their lives hung in a balance he could no longer influence, and that realization tore through him with a different kind of agony. Guilt twisted into desperation, desperation into self-loathing. He had always believed he could endure anything for the people he loved, yet here he was, reduced to a liability at the exact moment he was needed most. Across from him, Adam Newman watched the unraveling with a growing sense of dread that he refused to show. For once, his usual confidence was absent, replaced by calculation under pressure. This was not a situation he could manipulate with strategy alone. Nick's condition was not an obstacle to work around, it was the core problem threatening to destroy everything. Adam understood addiction in a way most people did not necessarily through personal experience, but through observation of human weakness. He knew the cost, the damage, the irreversibility of crossing that line again. And yet, logic collided with urgency. Every passing minute increased the risk to Sharon and Noah. Every delay tightened the noose around all of them. Adam's mind raced through possibilities, discarding each one as impractical or too slow. What remained was a single option he despised, a solution that felt less like a choice and more like surrender. The moment he acted, something shifted irreparably inside him. Encouraging Nick to take the very substance that had nearly destroyed him was not just a tactical decision, it was a moral fracture. Adam did not justify it. He buried the weight of it under necessity. Survival demanded sacrifice, and if that sacrifice came in the form of Nick's fragile recovery, then so be it. But even as he moved forward, a part of him recognized the truth he could not escape. This was not a temporary compromise. It was the reopening of a door that might never close again. Nick resisted at first, not with strength but with instinct. His body wanted it, his mind rejected it, and the conflict between the two manifested in hesitation that bordered on collapse. But desperation has a way of eroding even the strongest convictions. The image of Sharon and Noah trapped, vulnerable, possibly suffering, broke through his resistance. In the end, it was not addiction that made the decision for him. It was love, distorted and weaponized by circumstance. The relief was immediate, and that was what made it so dangerous. The trembling subsided, the chaos inside him dulled, and for a brief, fragile moment, Nick felt something resembling control return. It was enough to stand, enough to move, enough to convince himself that the worst had passed. But beneath that fragile stability, something darker had already taken hold. Unbeknownst to them, Matt Clark had anticipated every step. His plan was never about simple capture or confrontation, it was about psychological destruction. He understood his targets not as people, but as systems, patterns of behavior, emotional triggers, predictable responses under stress. Nick's addiction was not a weakness to exploit, it was a weapon to refine. The substance Nick consumed was carefully altered, its composition designed to mimic relief while accelerating internal damage. It was a trap layered beneath another trap, invisible until it was too late. Matt did not need to force his victims into submission, he let them destroy themselves, guiding the process with subtle precision. As they moved toward the location where Sharon and Noah were being held, the tension grew heavier with each step. The environment itself seemed to resist them, the air thick with the weight of what was coming. Adam remained alert, his focus sharpened by unease he could not fully explain. Something felt wrong, not in a way he could identify, but in a way he could not ignore. Nick, on the other hand, pushed forward with a determination that bordered on reckless. The temporary clarity he had gained fueled a false sense of capability. He ignored the subtle warning signs, the slight dizziness, the irregular heartbeat, the creeping weakness returning at the edges of his awareness. In his mind, there was no room for doubt. Stopping was not an option. Inside the warehouse, Sharon and Noah existed in a suspended state of fear and endurance. Time had lost its meaning, replaced by a constant awareness of vulnerability. Sharon's thoughts oscillated between hope and dread, her instincts telling her that rescue was possible even as her circumstances suggested otherwise. Noah, younger but no less affected, carried a different kind of tension-anger restrained by helplessness, a desire to act with no opportunity to do so. Matt observed everything from a distance, detached yet intensely focused. The cameras provided him with more than visual information. They offered insight into emotional states, into reactions, into the unraveling he had engineered. He did not rush the outcome. Patience was part of the design. When Adam and Nick finally breached the location, the moment should have been one of resolution. Instead, it marked the beginning of collapse. Nick's body, pushed beyond its limits by the adulterated substance, began to fail with alarming speed. What started as a slight falter escalated into a full loss of control. His movements slowed, then destabilized entirely. Adam recognized the shift immediately, but recognition did not equate to control. He moved to stabilize Nick, but the situation deteriorated faster than he could respond. The realization hit him with brutal clarity. This was not withdrawal, not exhaustion. This was something else, something worse. Nick's collapse was sudden, violent in its finality. One moment he was standing, driven by purpose, and the next he was on the ground, his body unresponsive, his breathing erratic. The sound of impact echoed through the space, cutting through the fragile hope that had existed only seconds before. Panic spread instantly. Sharon's composure shattered as she witnessed the scene, the fear she had suppressed erupting into something uncontrollable. Noah's anger transformed into urgency, his focus shifting from escape to survival. The plan, whatever remained of it, disintegrated under the weight of reality. Adam, forced into a position he had tried to avoid, faced the consequences of his decision in real time. The choice he had made, the line he had crossed, now manifested in the form of Nick's deteriorating condition. Guilt surged, but it had no place to settle. There was no time for reflection, no space for regret, only action remained, and even that felt insufficient. Above them, unseen but ever-present, Matt watched. There was no satisfaction in the conventional sense, no outward display of triumph. His expression remained neutral, almost clinical, as he observed the outcome unfold exactly as intended. Control, for him, was not about domination in the moment, but about inevitability, the certainty that events would progress according to his design. The chaos below intensified, each second compounding the crisis. Attempts to revive Nick clashed with the need to escape, with the reality of their vulnerability still intact. The environment that had once served as a prison now became a pressure chamber, amplifying every fear, every mistake, every consequence. And at the center of it all lay the undeniable truth. This was never just a rescue. It was a test, a manipulation, a carefully constructed scenario designed to force each of them into their worst selves. Adam's calculated ruthlessness, Nick's desperate sacrifice, Sharon's emotional fragility, Noah's restrained fury, all of it had been anticipated, provoked, and ultimately weaponized against them. What remained was not resolution, but escalation. The line between survival and destruction had blurred beyond recognition, and the cost of crossing it was still unfolding, one irreversible moment at a time. And was not resolution, but escalation. The line between survival and destruction had blurred beyond recognition, and the cost of